A few hours before the release of this video, CDPR dropped the Ray Tracing Overdrive mode for Cyberpunk 2077, a major graphical overhaul which is not only a technical achievement for this game, but serves as an overall herald for the future of video game graphics. Ray Tracing Overdrive, or path tracing as it's also referred to, makes lighting effects in the game significantly more realistic and beautiful to look at. I'd go so far as to say that to the glancing eye, it could be mistaken for real life. In fact, it kind of was the other day when my dad came round and asked what film I was watching, and that was before Ray Tracing Overdrive, so this is even better. It's also, however, a ridiculously intensive set of effects to produce, and all preview media has purely shown footage captured on an RTX 4090, the most powerful and expensive graphics card in the world. That's great to see and very relevant to the 10 people who own that card, but I want to show you how these new settings fare on the graphics card I have, which is the RTX 4080, seeing as though there's at least 100 people who own one of them. As always, before we begin, huge shout out to my Patreon supporters for going the extra mile to support the channel. Your support is crucial, especially when it comes to videos like this, which require expensive computer parts. For full context, in fact, here's all my important PC components. Now, my processor is more in the upper mid-tier range, so I kind of worried here that it was going to cause some bottlenecking, but it doesn't seem to be doing so, which is good because the graphics card already cost more than the rest of the PC, and I don't really want to buy another processor too just yet. So obviously, as we already know, these incredible effects are mostly made possible through DLSS frame generation, so everything you see is with that turned on. It really does make all the difference, and this is the only way I can play in overdrive mode on a 4080 in full 4K, something I'm very happy about because it means all my videos from here on out are going to look a little bit nicer. If we take a look at the patch notes, that says it should also work fine on a 4070 Ti, and based on the 60 to 80 frames I'm getting, which jumped to about 120 when I set DLSS to performance mode, I'm sure the 4070 Ti will be fine too for the 500 people who own that one. It also says it'll work on a 3090, but only in 1080p at a maximum of 30 FPS, which again makes perfect sense, as you basically need DLSS to make this run at a playable frame rate in 4K. For anyone else with any card that has over 8GB of VRAM, there's something for you as well. You can take screenshots with path tracing enabled, which is a nice way to preview for yourself what it will look like on hardware you have in the future. Honestly, this is mostly a first step towards the future of graphics, and that's why CDPR have appropriately named it a technology preview, a glimpse into the next step towards eventually reaching utter photorealism in video games. But it only took me about 20 minutes of running around before I found a few teething issues. Most notably, on checking out the Glen apartments, I found that the warping tree pattern on the kitchen cabinets was doing some weird untextured thing exclusively with path tracing turned on. Also, a lot of the cracks around where light kind of pulls together have a constant flicker going on, which can be distracting if you're trying to really look at the beauty, but aside from small issues like this, of which I'm sure there's plenty if you properly looked around, it definitely does make the game look much prettier. In external spaces, I definitely noticed that the lighting was different than before, though I couldn't always pinpoint specific differences in every scenario, but the general lighting definitely does feel more realistic overall. Now, I'm sure just like many of you, a bit of sunshine in real life really lifts my mood, and this may have just been a placebo here because I was actively looking for changes, but this daytime lighting almost seemed to trigger to a minor degree the same lift in mood that I feel when the sun actually starts shining IRL. The illumination just sort of felt like a crisp summer's day. Not a scientific way to describe it, I know, but I think ultimately the way a game makes you feel is incredibly important, and the fact that these new graphics might have been able to do that a bit more is very cool indeed. I haven't purely enjoyed a graphical overhaul on something as much, in fact, since I modded Skyrim with an EMB, but ultimately exterior spaces don't have that many specifically noticeable differences when switching between graphical modes, and where this effect really shines, quite literally, is in the smaller interior spaces with more moody lighting. I saw a ton of major differences in bathrooms especially, as well as heavily lit interiors like the Afterlife, with the most noticeable thing being ceilings. With the feature of path tracing causing light refraction to work on all surfaces, light sources fill a room much more naturally by also having light bounce off of walls, floors and ceilings properly, in addition to the more basic surfaces. Where previously the ceiling around the light source was shadowed, it's now much more naturally illuminated by the light bouncing off the rest of the room. Ceilings don't go opaque when we turn lights on in real life, provided the light source is bright enough and the walls somewhat reflective, and now they also don't in Cyberpunk. But honestly, as impressive as this technology is and the exciting times ahead that it heralds, I didn't always find the differences to be fully noticeable, and a ton of the time I was testing it here, especially in larger game same spaces, I was flicking back and forth looking desperately for changes. Though to be fair, that's more testament to how good the game looked already. Graphics are so good nowadays in general compared to when I was a kid that every jump in graphical technology seems continually less impressive. If you think back to the difference between a PS2 and a PS3's graphics, it feels like a way bigger leap than say the Xbox One to Xbox Series X. And the closer we come to photorealism, I think the harder it is to make leaps and bounds in this sector. At the end of the day, every type of technology does hit a limit eventually. Still, this is definitely the most major leap we've seen in a good few years. And whilst there's definitely still kinks to iron out, like this flickering problem, I think the technology itself is pretty exciting when we envision what the next generation of console, or the 5000 to 6000 series GPUs, are gonna look like. It's also an absolutely perfect game to trial this technology on, because there's just so many light sources of differing sizes and colours. It also just goes to show how long CDPR expects Cyberpunk to endure as a game. After all, I don't think they'd invest the time and money to bring us updates like this unless they believed people would still be playing when the hardware required to run this is actually much more widely available and affordable. In fact, if it weren't for this channel, there's absolutely no way I'd ever have been able to afford, much less justify, buying one of these stupidly expensive cards. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's supported the channel over the last 6 months or maybe more by watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, and maybe even becoming a patron. It's literally thanks to you, and you alone, that it's possible for me to do videos like this. Anyway, I hope this was helpful in showcasing the new path tracing technology on the RTX 4080. If you have a card capable of running it, then defo go check out some smaller interior spaces for the most noticeable results. But beyond that, just enjoy the game looking slightly more beautiful and the daytime lighting possibly giving you a mood lift. Anyway, comment below your thoughts on this update, and let me know how close to reality you think this really looks. I think if I glanced this on a screen, I might not necessarily realize it's a game, but I think actually paying attention, it's still quite obviously got some dead giveaways. Distant textures are still downscaled at times, and whilst the people are definitely some of the best looking I've seen in a game, they're still quite a ways off being mistakably real. Thank you again for watching. I'm Sam Bram. You guys really are genuinely awesome, and I'll see you soon in another video.